Hey everybody, it's Tripl-L coming in with a kind of different My Hero Academia video. Now, this video is going to be covering something that happened in the recent chapter and the reaction to it. And I thought it would be interesting to talk about this just because we talk about this on the live streams and also because this channel covers ships sometimes. So it's just an interesting situation in general, and it's focused around Mineta's lines. On the western side, as it turned out, this caused a lot of tweets about chapter 321, and honestly it's a little bit ridiculous that this is how it happened. But if you're on the live streams with me, we know how the Twitter mob kind of forms. But it's just so interesting, so let's get into it. Just a face cam so you guys can see what's going on here. So this is Audrey. Audrey's a really great source for information from Hero Academia. Like, she was one of the people that translated some of the stuff that came from the exhibition. Anyway, Audrey has Japanese connections, so she was one of the best people to talk about this. So in this first tweet, what she's saying is that the translation from Viz was the correct one, that being that Mineta said that he was falling for Izuku. What's interesting is how far this had gotten. So she goes on to say that this doesn't mean that Mineta is bi, and then it goes on to say, well, given the context of Mineta's character, the vibe is more like, man, I love you, you inspire me, I respect you so much. Thing is, you can go look at my video too. This is how I read it from the very beginning. Now, mind you, even when we were looking at the spoiler translations, the translator on Tumblr also had to go in and say, like, yeah, this is what he is saying. But even then, this interpretation, this is the one that makes sense. And this leads me into, like, the title of the video. This is the reminder that a portion of the fandom does not have good reading comprehension. That's just the unfortunate reality, because in this case, there is an objective truth. And the objective truth is kind of like what Audrey is saying. Mineta is just being dramatic. Now, mind you, there's a few more things coming into this. But before that, my opinion, when I read that line with Mineta, the way I'm thinking about it, I see Mineta says, I really fell for you, Izuku. I'm thinking, oh, that's a very nice play on Mineta's character. That's actually very appropriate for Mineta, because Mineta is a character who revolves around attraction, love, and the more perverted side of that. He's also a character who uses really charged dialogue as comic relief. He's Horikoshi's favorite character. So what you have here is just that really passionate kind of dialogue being repurposed into a serious moment. When you see this line and how honest it is, this is in a lot of ways very true to the character, and a very interesting way of making something that would usually be for Mineta's comic relief, taking that and turning it into something just really flat out honest. But of course, there was a giant reaction. That said, keep it in mind, in context, his line makes sense as just flat out a guy being so inspired by another guy. And of course, when it comes to the shipping, you have to, like, this is where we have to also ask, is it wrong that a guy could be inspired by another guy? Does inspiration require a romantic component? Well, no it doesn't. You can 100% be inspired by what another person does. Inspiration isn't hidden behind romance. Now, the thing is, of course, Audrey's response to how she went about this really shows what the situation is on Twitter. But Audrey went on to say, I asked a few of my Japanese bilingual staff, native Japanese fluent English, and we came to the conclusion that while this thing is a word that's generally used romantically, in this context, it's more of a deep respect as mentioned in the other thread. Anyway, Audrey continues, also for those who actually wish Mineta to be bi, this is not bi erasure, and you can interpret it however you like. However, fans did not interpret this line to be romantic. So for this, I think platonic makes more sense. And this brings up now, of course, like with Japanese, there's a little bit more context going into it. And maybe in Japanese, well, she talked a little bit about the word. What Audrey is saying here is that the Japanese fandom did not have the reaction, but that might also be because the context was a little bit more immediate, clearer in that language. Because when you go into English, like, let's face it, right, to be able to tell that Mineta was being platonic in this situation requires you actually thinking about the rest of Hero Academia and thinking about Mineta's character within it, and being able to say, oh yeah, no, this is a matter of thematics being repurposed to elevate what is usually a negative trait into something very positive, that being Mineta's character in general. To be able to do that, not many people are going to be able to do that when they're trigger happy on Twitter. And it is unfortunate that we had to get in a situation where people think that there is bi erasure occurring. Now, Audrey does say something here. You can interpret it how you like. And I actually really agree with that. And she goes on to say, TLDR is you can interpret it how you like, but I think if it was meant to be something interpreted as a coming out statement, then the Japan side of the fandom should react in the same way, which they did not. Most comments I see are people confused why Mineta is trending. So again, Audrey's saying, like, if the original language people are not misinterpreting this, then it's probably the English side is misinterpreting this. And of course, the Japanese would have the advantage here because it's their language. Usually using another audience to justify an interpretation, that could be kind of risky, but given this situation, I agree. And again, context on the English side also kind of agrees with this. Anyway, after that, Audrey went on to give an explanation regarding the nuances of the words and speaking about why it wasn't translated to admire instead. So let's see what Audrey wrote here. So as she explained in the other thing, it wasn't admire because the word that Mineta used was romantic. It is usually romantic. The only difference is that given Mineta's tendency to speak in hyperbole and be dramatic, it's taken as I love you, bro. Don't do this to me, bro. I think it's the context that makes it easy to misunderstand in English, but in Japanese, it's more commonly read as platonic given the context of the character and the situation that they're in. So that's pretty much what I just explained previously, but that was a very nice explanation from Audrey. Now, I do want to go back to the TLDR that she gave specifically. You can interpret it how you like. I agree with that 100%. I think if people want to imagine that Mineta is in love with Izuku, 100% go for it. But what we have to avoid is people treating this as gospel and creating a reality that is based on their own lack of reading comprehension. And also a reality that is based on the nuance that is lost when you translate between languages. If the reading comprehension isn't there, usually people will be able to pick up by the actual words. But given that we're in this situation, yes, I think you're 100% within your power to go and make your shipping material, but don't be one of those people that treats it as gospel and then tries to enforce this on everyone else. Because really, no one really cares about whatever anyone is shipping, right? We all know this. That's how people have fun. It is a problem, however, when shipping wars start, just because there's a disagreement about a perceived reality. Now, ultimately, when you look at the situation, given the things that had to be said to explain the situation, we do know there's a significant portion of the Twitter audience, at the very least, that was legitimately confused by this. And it is unfortunate that came about, but this doesn't happen that often. This was a really interesting exercise in just seeing how much more complex Japanese is and what happens when the other side doesn't have all the tools required to properly interpret a situation. Anyway, this was just a really cool thing to see. To the shippers out there, I hope you have fun with the Mineta and Izuku ship if you're going to be doing that. Just, of course, remember, don't get too upset when nothing comes out of this, because nothing is going to come out of this. This is like the bigger point. Nothing's going to come out of this. This is just Mineta this is just Mineta having his moment with Izuku and trying to call him back. And thank you all for watching the video. I have to run now, but yeah, I hope you have an absolutely great day, and until next time.